We have been talking about impact of urbanization on environment and what are various environmental issues that are faced uh, or experienced in the cities. In this lecture, we'll be talking about one specific issue associated with urban environment, and that is the impact of biodiversity, impact of urbanization on biodiversity. I'm sharing my PPT and I hope that it is visible. Now, you have certainly heard this particular word biodiversity, and biodiversity is actually an abbreviation, it's a short form of the word biological diversity. So biodiversity is basically a biological diversity of flora and fauna. Flora means vegetation and fauna means animals. So when in a particular region we have a large variety of vegetation and large variety of animals, we usually say that the biodiversity of this particular region is rich. Now here we are talking about variety of different types. We don't mean here by a number of one tree, but we are talking about numbers of different trees or different kinds of animals that are present in a particular region. The biodiversity is of three kinds. One is genetic biodiversity, then species biodiversity, and then ecological biodiversity. The word genetic biodiversity is very clear. It means the diversity of genes. As you know that every individual has a very unique genetic code. It means that even though we belong to a same species of human beings, still we find that every one of us have different genes. Okay, so there is a lot of variety of genetic code or genetic or genes within a species, within one species, among different individuals. That is called as genetic biodiversity. Species biodiversity is a diversity of species. So how many number of different species are there in a particular region or particular environment? So that is called as species biodiversity. Then we have ecological diversity, that is diversity of ecosystems. So we have different kinds of ecosystems, terrestrial or aquatic, such as forest ecosystem, grassland ecosystem, or a river or a creek ecosystem, or a pond ecosystem. Now, all these are different kinds of ecosystems. Now, if in one region you have different kinds of ecosystems, then we'll say that the ecological diversity is significantly high. So genetic, species, and ecological, these are three different kinds of biodiversity. Now urbanization, and as we have already learned that urbanization is all about concentration of population at a particular place. Now, and the related activities such as construction, industries, lot of vehicles, etc., etc., we find that the entire process of urbanization disturbs this particular biodiversity, right? Now, this particular it's a bar graph, multiple bar graph, and it basically shows different kind of animals in metropolitan regions of Pune, Bangalore, Delhi, MMR, that is Mumbai metropolitan region, and Ahmedabad. Now, if you see the graph, because usually we see that in cities, there won't be much of a biodiversity. But especially if you observe this particular bar of MMR, Mumbai metropolitan region, and you can see such a long bar. This is a bar of flora. And you can see that it is not comparable with other rest of the cities in this particular diagram. So it means that there are so many different kinds of vegetation that are available or that are found in Mumbai metropolitan region. Around 1500 different species of flora we find. Similarly, we have around 400 species of birds, around 50 species of mammals, around 100 to 150 species of butterflies, and around 300 or so species of fish, right? So even in a extremely urbanized area, we still have a lot of biodiversity, and which obviously needs to be protected. Now the problem is that in what way urbanization impacts biodiversity. The first important aspect is fragmentation of natural habitat. What is fragmentation? Fragmentation is breaking the thing into pieces. So if we are talking about one forest, okay, single forest, continuous forest, then if that forest is what do we mean by fragmentation of that forest? That forest is divided into two parts. Now how it happens? Because of urbanization. Now it usually happens that if a particular forest region is located near urban area or inside the urban area, such as we have in Sanjay Gandhi National Park in Mumbai, we do find that roads pass through these forest areas. Now, when a road passes through the forest areas, as you can see in this next map, this greener area, as you can see, it's a map of Sanjay Gandhi National Park. And then all these routes that you can see, this black color road, for example, from Thane to that goes to Borivali, this is Ghodbandar Road. And you can see the part of this road is going through the Sanjay Gandhi National Park. Plus, there are many other relatively minor roads that also are passing through Sanjay Gandhi National Park. Now, these roads are actually bifurcating the forest into two parts. Now, this affects the movement of animals, right? So when animals have to move from one part of the forest to another part of the forest, and if there is a road that is laid down in between the two different parts of the forest, then what happens that animals need to cross over the road. And many times it happens, and we might have seen some Facebook or Instagram videos also, or reels also, in which you have seen how the animals are killed, or how animals are killed in the accidents, or how they attempt to cross the road and it lead to an accident. So all such incidences very much occur because of that. Now, especially it affects the animals if because of road, the area where usually animals go to drink water is on the other side of the road, and where every day animals need to cross over that road to drink water. Now, these are some of the extremely significant cases where accidents can take place. So this is an important aspect of fragmentation of natural habitat. So roads or any other transport link that runs through the natural habitat like forest leads to number of issues, and I've already given you example of Ghodbandar Road in Thane that passes through Sanjay Gandhi National Park. Another important problem that we are facing in the cities is radiation signals, the mobile signals. And by now, we all of us know that mobile gives out or emits radiation. Now, this radiation affects animals, and especially the birds like sparrows are especially affected because of these mobile tower signals. And there are various other associated factors with it, like the use of unleaded fuel or lack of nesting places, etc., which also affects the bird life in a particular urban area. Now, it leads to it may reduce the population of birds such as sparrows to such an extent that they experience the threat of extinction because of that. So because of mobile tower signals, we have seen that sparrows cannot live in such areas, they die, and because of that the number of sparrows significantly decline in a particular urban area, to an extent that the sparrows are on the verge of extinction. So this and that is the reason why in the cities we find nowadays a Save Sparrow campaign or different campaigns or movement to save urban birds especially. So it's a very good example of how radiation signals affects animals. These are some of the pictures of Save Sparrow campaign, that how artificial nests or artificial homes are made for sparrows so that they can live and sustain in the cities. urban encroachment in the forest area is a significant issue, where we find that because the forests are surrounded by urban areas, we find usually from the edges of or the margins of the forest, gradually people start building roads, people start building, constructing buildings, and gradually they start encroaching the forest area. Now, because we are encroaching the homes of animals, obviously it lead to human and animal conflicts. And then we listen to news that the leopard have entered into a housing society and all such issues, and usually we blame the leopards or animals in this case. But the fact is that we are building our constructing our buildings or our homes in their home, in their habitat, in their area, and obviously in such case the human animal conflict bound to happen. And again, Sanjay Gandhi National Park, I'm always giving that example, because you should know that Sanjay Gandhi National Park is a forest area which is located inside the boundary of Greater Mumbai. Usually, we find that forests are located outside the city, but Mumbai is a very unique city where we find that a forest area is inside the Greater Mumbai. And that is the reason why these human-animal conflicts are very common in such areas. Another important problem leading to associated with a biodiversity issue is increasing toxicity of waste, because as our life is full of chemicals, right? I mean, throughout the day, we keep on using so many chemicals, and so our waste also becomes more and more chemicalized, and therefore it becomes very toxic or highly poisonous. Now, animals, or I mean the birds like vultures, for example, who are scavengers, who are actually the cleaners of environmental system, because they feed on the waste and the dead remains, and in that way they help the decomposition of the waste in a very natural way. But these vultures, now when they eat waste, what actually is happening is that they are eating the waste which is very toxic or very poisonous, and that is leading to death of vultures, especially the dumping ground areas, which are the areas where a very large colonies of vultures are found. But their food is being chemicalized, or their food is becoming more toxic and poisonous, because we are using more and more poisonous or toxic materials or even food. And that is the reason why the death of vultures occurs in a very large number, especially in the dumping ground areas. Now, the way declining population of a bird or of an animal is a problem, in a similar way, increase in the population of any species uncontrollably also is a problem. So when we gave example of a sparrow as an example of a bird which is dying or on the verge of extinction, urban bird which is on the verge of extinction, on the other extreme we have example of birds like pigeons, which are uncontrollably their population have increased. Now, such uncontrollable increase in population of a particular bird or any animal, for example, in certain localities, stray dogs, for example, now it certainly leads to various problems. Pigeons are particularly problematic as they carry certain kinds of pathogens, and wherever the large concentration of pigeons are found, the people living in the nearby area or people living very close to such localities, we find they are prone to certain kind of diseases, especially respiratory diseases, and therefore very heavy rise in population of certain animals of birds is also a problem. So sometimes we feed them out as a part of our custom or a tradition or love for animals, but we don't think this particular important aspect, that uncontrolled increase of population of any species, including humans, is a problem or is a threat to biodiversity. Many birds die due to electrocution, I mean because of electric shocks. And you might have observed, especially in the railway station areas, or along the railway tracks, when you can see that there are very high voltage wires that are running over the tracks. And many a times, if birds come in contact with such wires, especially if they are open, then we find that such birds die of electrocution. So many number of birds die because of that also. Another important problem more associated with plant species is introduction of the non-native species. Non-native species, those species of vegetation or trees that are not local, that are not native to the area, but they have been brought from outside and then planted in our area. So that is, they are called as non-native species of plants. Now, such species which we may be planting as a source of food or as a source of getting flowers or decorative plants, but these plants, non-native plants, it has been seen that they compete with the native plants or with the native species, and at times that they practically do not allow the native species to grow in a healthy manner in the area. And so after, in a due course of time, we find that जो local vegetation है, native vegetation है या native plants है, वो completely remove हो जाते हैं, and the non-native species जो है वो completely grow होने को लगता है. Now, because these non-native species are not the part of the local ecosystem, so they give rise to the environmental issues or different kinds of environmental problems. So these are all problems that are connected with urbanization and biodiversity. So in examination, you may get a question for 10 marks, that is, discuss the impact of urbanization on biodiversity. So you may write the answer to that question in a very structured manner. For example, you can give a brief introduction for 2 marks, in which you will talk about what is biodiversity, what is the different types of biodiversity, genetic, species biodiversity, ecological diversity, etc. And then we will also talk about how urbanization is related to the problems associated with biodiversity. As it's an introductory paragraph, not more than 5 to 6 sentences are expected. It will be a very small introduction that you are expected to write. Then your main answer for about 8 marks should be devoted to talking about different factors or causes that are threatening biodiversity in the urban areas, some of which we already have talked about, such as fragmentation of natural habitat. Fragmentation is when the natural habitat like forest gets divided into different parts because of the roads running through it, and then it affects the movement of the animals. Radiation signals, the particularly mobile tower radiation signals, so that affects delicate birds or small birds like sparrows. Then urban encroachment in forest areas, that is building roads or constructing buildings in forest area that lead to human-animal conflict, or increasing toxicity of waste. Higher the population, higher will be the waste generated, and if that waste is more toxic or poisonous, then it will again have an impact on those birds which are feeding on the waste. We also talked about uncontrolled increase in the population of certain species. As I said, that declining population of a particular bird is a problem. Exactly in the same way, increasing population of a particular species such as pigeons or a stray dog also is a problem environmentally. Similarly, we have talked about the problem associated with death of birds due to electrocution. And lastly, we talked about how non-native species create a problem for the native plant species and again lead to environmental issues. So these are some of the causes that you should give the title of the point and write a small paragraph on each one of them, right? Because it has got 8 marks. So total answer with 2 marks of introduction and 8 marks of the main content, you will be able to answer the question that related to impact of urbanization on biodiversity. Now, in your own local area, wherever you stay, wherever you go to work, you might have seen some of these problems, or you might want to add a point which from your own experience. So even such points you can very much add, but see that you are giving examples. It is very important that not to talk very theoretically, but give examples to illustrate, to support the point, the relationship between the threat of impact of urbanization on biodiversity. So I hope that uh, this particular topic is clear. And go to your textbook, read the textbook, see the online resources that are shared on the Google Classroom. And if you still have a problem, you can very much connect with me, and we will sort it out. Thanks a lot.